Hey everyone, I wanted to talk to you about something more serious than yarn today, as much as we love yarn. And I'm wearing the same clothes as my last video because I'm just recording two videos in the same day. Anyhow, and this is kind of on a personal note, about 2.5 years ago I suffered a mild stroke. Specifically a TIA, which stands for Trans-Ischemic Attack. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of history about what happened before, and then I'm going to give you, from an insider's point of view of somebody who's had one, some things that you need to be aware of regarding a stroke, and what the person is going through and how you can even help them if you know somebody. And you probably will in your lifetime know somebody who has a stroke if you don't have one yourself. So this is all for you. So I think it started probably a few years ago, several years ago actually. I started having auras. And people will tell you, oh, auras are all about having migraines. Well, I wasn't having a migraine. Just I would see auras. Now, they didn't bother me. I kind of found them unusual activity, just something interesting happening, and I didn't understand them. I didn't have insurance at the time because my income was high enough to be required to have insurance, but I didn't have enough income to afford insurance. So I sort of fell between the cracks of not having insurance and not being eligible for Medi-Cal. So anyways, so I just had these auras, no big deal. This went on for a while. I moved here where I live now in 2014, and around that time I started having auras pretty much every day. Still didn't think too much of it. They were just more of a nuisance than anything else. And if you don't know what an aura is, it's well, the first one I had was really noticeable. It was just like you have this bubble that's right in the middle of your vision, and it just gets bigger and it expands, and pretty soon you can see in the middle of the bubble, and the edges are all like this electric pattern, and it's just kind of crazy, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and pretty soon fades out of your vision. You don't see it anymore. Sometimes you only see part of one, but they always start in the middle. You're like looking at something, you're like, why can't I see straight ahead? What's in my way? And it's a little aura that's starting, and pretty soon it just fades out of the way. Anyhow, in August of 2016, I cleaned the carpets at my landlady's mother's house. And afterwards, I developed a pretty severe cough, and I thought I was getting into pneumonia. And oh, well, wait, I gotta back up even before that. Okay, in the spring of 2016, I had like 3 or 4 little episodes where my cheek would go numb and then half my tongue. But it would disappear in 5 minutes. And I really didn't think too much of it, even though one time it happened in the car, just went numb, and but it comes back in 5 minutes. Then I had one time where my right arm went numb. 5 minutes later, everything's back to normal. But when my arm went numb, I went to my landlady and I said, I kind of have to let you know something is not right here. And she's a doctor, retired, and she said, well, I mean, she's a retired dentist, but believe me, dentists have a huge amount of medical knowledge, and neither one of us were thinking stroke. And she said, why don't you just make sure you take aspirin and call and get on Medi-Cal right away, which by this time I did qualify now for Medi-Cal. And so I started taking also a pretty heavy dose of aspirin. The auras completely stopped. Those other things stopped. no more of that numbing thing happening. Okay, now I'll go back to, I cleaned the carpets. I thought I was getting pneumonia. I could not stop coughing. I lost like 17 pounds in 4 days, and I was not eating, and I just was really not well. Finally, I said, okay, I have to go to the doctor. Finally go to the doctor for the first time in I don't know how many years. But I had this Medi-Cal, so I could go. Because believe me, when you don't have insurance, you don't go to the doctor unless you are dying. You just don't go. So I went to the doctor, and they sent me out for lung x-rays, and nothing showed up. But my blood pressure was so high in the office, they didn't even want me to leave the office. They tried to give me some medication to bring it down in the office, and that wasn't working. I couldn't even tell you how high my blood pressure was. It was just like through the roof. Well, it turns out later I found out that I had been having an asthma attack for like a week. And it was really severe. Anyways, so 2 days later, I'm sitting at home at my computer, right where I'm sitting right now. The numbness comes with the cheek, and then the tongue, and then the arm went numb. Only this time, it didn't go away in 5 minutes. And you kind of, I still wasn't thinking stroke. I didn't know what to really think about it. But I knew it was a little more serious. But still, you're like, oh, this is a very interesting thing that's happening to my body. And I thought, well, let's see if I can rewire my brain to work the mouse with the other hand. Well, that didn't work. I could not work my computer mouse. I couldn't make my fingers press the mouse buttons. My brain and my fingers were just like disconnected from each other. So I couldn't click on anything on my computer screen. I had a very hard time using my cell phone. But I finally got a hold of my landlady, and she's like, okay, take a couple aspirin, just go lay down for a little while. So I did, but you know what, like 4 hours later, I still had the same problem. Okay, so now I've been having this issue really for close to 6 hours. And I just said, this is not right. Now, by this time, my whole right side was like not working quite right. I could kind of walk, but kind of was wanting to topple to the right. I finally made it back to my desk, and it took me a while to work my phone. I just couldn't do it because I'm so right-handed. And I called the 24-hour nurse, and she said, hang up, call 911. Well, I didn't want to call an ambulance, so I called my other next door neighbor, and I said, can you come over, please? And she came over, and I said, I need you to take me to the hospital because something's not right. And I tried to stand up, and I started to collapse. And she sat me down, and she called the ambulance. So, hang on a second. So anyways, the ambulance came, and I went to the hospital because I was having a stroke. But I was in the hospital for only 2 days, and I walked out 2 days later. Okay, I was walking. So it was only a TIA. It was not like a brain aneurysm that bled out. It was just a little TIA. I don't want to say little, but my stroke symptoms were not major. I didn't have like this major stroke that was going to take months to recover from. I am on a ton of blood pressure medicine now to keep things lower. I'm on blood thinners because probably what it was just a tiny blood clot that was thrown off from all my coughing. But be that as it may, there's things that I want you to know about the recovery process, and just from an insider's point of view, because these things I don't think people talk about and they don't really understand. They're just like, they just see it from the outside. Oh yes, Uncle John had a stroke and we're helping him, but I'm going to tell you from the inside. And I just had a small one, but I'm going to tell you from the inside. Okay, I understand you, but when I'm fresh in a stroke, my left and right brain aren't in sync. Some part of it got zapped and fried, so I'm not in sync. So although I hadn't become stupid, I just need people to talk more slowly. That was the first part. Just don't talk at me so fast. I'm trying to process and my brain is a little bit fried. Also, number 2, our eyes see you, but they're not receiving information at exactly the same way. So just know that we're trying to focus and trying to find equilibrium. My affected arm, which was my right arm, had what I call drift. So like I could hold it out like this and it would just fall away to the side. And that took about maybe a month before it stopped doing that, before I could just hold it steady. And it did have a little wobble to it. It still sometimes will have a wobble if I'm picking up something really heavy. It just shakes like this. Not a tremor. It's a whole like muscle wobble thing. I'm reading off a list of things. I actually wrote a list up about a week after my stroke. It took me 8 hours to write up a short 1 page because I could hardly type. But I did it because I needed to document some things. Okay, let's see. Reading. Oh my goodness. There was one point in the hospital where I was so dyslexic I could not even look at words because they were just all scrambled. All the letters were scrambled. In fact, I just was like, just take that away from me. I don't want to see it. And slowly I got back into reading. When I got home, the only thing I could tolerate reading was Twitter because it was just short. Okay, I can read this one sentence and I can deal with it. And I move on to the next sentence. Okay, but read a book, that was out of the question. I could not visually follow the cursor on my screen. It was really hard. My brain just wasn't functioning fast enough to follow it. And so I would just be like, where's the cursor? I can't find the cursor. Sometimes I still get that way. I can't find the cursor. Typing, as I mentioned before, is very, very frustrating. Just because your fingers aren't connecting properly with your brain. So, like for every 2 words, you're going to make a mistake in one. And then you've got to correct that. You spend so much time correcting. It's just crazy. So, that is partly why, like when I was in the hospital, my family was texting me and I could not text back. I could not control my hand enough to do it. So, if you have a person in your life who's had a stroke, don't text them. Call them, because they can talk on the phone, but texting is like really hard for a while. Okay, number 7. Our energy when we get out of the hospital is pretty low because the hospital has you woken up like every couple of hours to test this and test that. Constant heart monitor, by the way, my heart perfectly fine. Just constant, and you are trying so hard to recover from this brain problem. So the energy is really, really low. Okay, number 8, depending on the severity of the stroke, some support might be required, but not much, because stroke was very mild. But about a week afterwards, I had my neighbor come over and I said, please can you slice these onions for me because I can't hold the knife right. And so she did that for me. And just little things like that, because you just do not have great hand control for a while. Okay, number 9, if we think we can do something without help, just let us. It's fine. Number 10, open containers for us, because like I said, our hands aren't great and we are very uncoordinated sometimes, and this can result in a lot of spills and breakage and swearing. I never swore so much in my life, not that anybody heard me, and I don't like to swear. Lord forgive me, but I mean, swear words came to me that you would not believe, because I would get so frustrated just doing the most simple things. Medicines. Okay, this is number 11. Medicines are sometimes hard to swallow because half of our mouth is, well, half mine was kind of numb. So the medicines needed to have a coating on them, and I needed to swallow them down with something kind of slick that was not water. And by the way, part of my mouth and part of my tongue are still numb, and the tips of these fingers are still numb. And it has resulted in a loss of some sensation of taste. I can type pretty well now, but still kind of frustrating. Okay, bathing. A bar of soap, not good. Liquid soap only, because bar of soap is hard to hold on to when you don't have control of your hand. So for people with strokes, give them liquid soap only. Brushing your teeth. This is number 13. I could not make circular motions for a long time. I could only go like, and your arm is still strong. Your arm is as strong as it was before you had the stroke, but now it's not coordinated. So I had a lot of mouth injuries going, you know, because your arm would just jerk suddenly in an uncoordinated way. So I might even recommend, if a person's had a stroke, get them an electric toothbrush so they don't have to do very much work. Number 14, tying knots. I still have trouble tying knots. I don't know what it is, just getting the loop over is just, sometimes I really have to slow down, do it real slowly. For whatever reason, my brain doesn't want to do it anymore. Number 15, getting keys and keyholes. You won't believe how hard it is to just get it in there. You have to kind of brace your hand against the thing and the doorknob or the mailbox and get your key in there. It's hard to kind of get the key in. And the first time I went to the grocery store afterwards and I had to type my pin into the little POS, and I could just barely make the buttons go down because I just had no finger strength. Okay, speech. Your speech might be affected. Mine was a little bit affected. There were some words I couldn't say. Every now and then I still get a little tongue-tied. Words like I couldn't say ginger, I couldn't say a soft G, I couldn't say a J. They have you go through the whole alphabet to see what your letters are sounding like, and some of mine didn't sound so good. They're okay now, but for a while, even when I would get tired, some of my words would get slurry like I was stroking. Not like a drunken slurry, just, and I felt it, but other people said they didn't notice it, but I could tell that my words were not coming out right. And last, I'll talk about driving. I was not able to drive for a couple of weeks, and then the first time that I did drive, I just felt like I didn't really have great control with my right leg. It was like putting too much pressure on the accelerator, or I had to relearn sort of how to use that leg right. And you know, one thing was when I came home from the hospital, I was walking, but it was with a weird gait. It was like kind of like a puppet with their strings cut. I kind of, I can't really explain it. And that took about a week to work itself out to where I was kind of walking normally again. But anyways, a couple months after I got out, I started crocheting, and I didn't start crocheting to help me regain my motor skills. It was because a friend was having a baby and I got given a bunch of yarn, and so I thought, what am I going to do with it? So I made some stuff, but I haven't looked back with the crocheting. I just keep doing it. I think it may have helped my hand regain some of its skills and coordination. But anyways, that is what it's like to have a stroke, and some things that you can think about that would be helpful if you have had one, or know somebody's going to have one, or know somebody who's had one, how you can help them or deal with them and what they're going through. So I hope that was helpful, and I will talk to you all again sometime soon. Bye.